I'm going to be mostly talking to this camera over here, but I wanted to establish a shot here and show you what I'm looking at. I'm not going to come back to this again. I just wanted to show you more than me talking directly to the camera. So now that we've done that, I'm going to talk to you today about books that I wrote that are designed to get you work. Writers, I wrote a book to get you jobs. I wrote a couple of them. We're going to talk about 4 of them, and there's 2 coming. We're going to talk about those. Now I'm going to focus on that. So you'll see me pause this and keep talking over here.
Hey there! We're going to talk today about some books that I wrote that will create work opportunities for some of you. You know, when you want to establish trust, I have learned that it can be done through ideology. You can come together in the name of Jesus, or just pay people. Okay? Just pay people. You know, money is a great way to establish some kind of a trust, even if it's just a little bit of trust. What I've done is I've written some books. I'm going to have to forget my reading glasses here. I've written some books that I want you to benefit from and go out and find work. They each serve a purpose. Some of them cost money. Some of them you can get for free if you just attend one of our meetups. This is not an attempt to get you to join a club or a multi-level marketing scheme or a cult or anything ridiculous like that. When I was getting into the bread and butter of where I was going to get clients for biography from, I ran into the idea that I needed to look into supporting professions like, well, who really needs an obituary? Obituary is the shortest form of a biography. And I like to say the obituary is the very first sentence of a biography. Biography is written about somebody who's dead. Obviously, we have unauthorized biographies. We're talking about the real stuff. In order for you to legally write a biography, the person has to be dead. Otherwise, it's an assisted autobiography. All right, just protect your. Now, there's 4 books I wrote I want to tell you about, and there's meetups that I have for them that I want to invite you to. We might not be in your city yet, but we'll get there. Okay, when we get there, I want you to develop relationships with the people around you and arm yourself with the goal of becoming better at what it is that you want to do when it comes to writing, civil rights. We're going to do a whole thing on civil initiatives. And if you're a student athlete, I got one just for you. First thing I'm going to do is talk about the book. It's called Before You Go. I'm going to rattle off some other titles here. Between the Lines is another title. Another title is Last Word. Another title is Think Ahead. And I haven't titled it yet, but I soon will. It's specifically a startup biography kit, or an autobiography kit, a workbook, if you will, for student athletes. All of you were like, yo, I want somebody to write my, who's going to play me in the movie? I'll play myself. Oh, no, you're not. Okay? Ray Charles didn't play himself, and neither are you. But we have to get the story from somewhere. Now, I brought a stack of these to show you. This is Joe Cavalieri, the You Ah Man. That's his biography that I scribed. He died a few years ago. His is going to be a scholarship fund. My dad has a benevolent fund named after him. We'll be bringing it to Arizona soon. Right now it's filed in Colorado. Here's another one of his teammates on the police department in Tucson wrote one. Hold on, this is being stubborn. Called Old School Narc. I know what Steve's thinking. He's watching Narcos on HBO, not realizing those books were written back when they first happened in the late 70s and early 80s. It takes 20 to 30 years to really get anything off the ground unless you're Molly's Game, in which Aaron Sorkin jumped into. It was a big case, okay? Sometimes these things hit and stick around, and sometimes they take a while. And it always depends on the hook. Raising enough money. I know the report back from all the major studios when they read my screenplay, yes they did, was $650 to $850 million minimum. Roughly 44 episodes, 3 seasons, streaming. If we go with today's technology, we don't know what it's going to be by the time this comes out. I was developing this back when VHS was still available in stores. Okay, that's how long it's been. I was 17 when he died. I started writing it 6 months later. It took me 25 years to get through chapter 1. This is an ongoing classics deal I have with Kevin Sorbo. We shared the same manager in LA, wonderful man of God. Agree, disagree with him, he's a wonderful man of God, my experience. His wife is a civil rights and education advocate. She's wonderful. She's got a podcast if you haven't seen it. She's really entertaining. She and Carrie Fisher were the reason why I love Burnett so much. Shout out to my love interest in another state. I've got other books that I've written. This is Boys of Summer. This is Schindler's List meets A League of Their Own. There were internment camps in Arizona, as well as other states, where the Japanese were basically held against their will. And they had baseball leagues to keep them sane. And then Just in Time, the gospel version of James Bond meets Back to the Future. It's pretty cool. We thought we were going to make Just in Time with Mel Gibson's team back in the mid-2000s after The Passion of the Christ came out. Didn't work out, but the Lord led me to other teachers. I hold 3 master's degrees before I share the rest with you. Film editing, which is where I got my first teaching license in CTE. It makes me a legal expert in media. Business management from UNLV 2019. And the third one is in psychology, substance abuse recovery, aka I'm an expert when it comes to drugs, to quote Judge Reinhardt from the movie Stripes. Now, let's talk about, I'm pointing at my computer screen, let's talk about Before You Go. Before you go is a play on words. Before you go and do that, before you go and you experience that ridiculously no money to be made writing profession where nobody gets paid to write screenplays, nobody gets paid to write books, nobody gets paid to write anything. Only real men work jobs in taking out the trash and digging ditches and moving boxes around. Sure, if you can't read, there's plenty of work to go around. You gotta know where to look. So what I do is I throw you everything I can think of. If I had to sit down with your about to enter college, high school graduate, or somebody who's 15 like I was, where do you begin? Today, online access to certain databases like the Secretary of State looking up if a business structure is legitimate. I would have escaped most of the con men I had to put up with in Arizona in the mid-1990s. Just ugly, ugly learning curve that I had. But it led me to Christ. I went from being an agnostic Catholic to a born-again Assembly of God type. I'm not here to convert you. I don't apologize for my faith. Before You Go is the pep talk, the tutorial, the academic advising that I wasn't allowed to give while I was 11 years in the school system in Arizona, Nevada, and Colorado as a teacher, licensed teacher. And Before You Go is all of the wisdom I would give to the students and say, whether you are writing because you're on the tail end of your profession and you've got a lot of things to share, or you're new and you've got these stories you want to tell and you find out, wait a second, it's bubbling in me, but it was done by Tolkien or it was done by somebody I've not yet discovered. I had a whole novel on my miserable experiences trying to find my way through the Christian media once upon a time that I didn't realize my story had been told by somebody else. It was called The Handmaid's Tale, in which they tried to control procreation through militant religious types. Imagine Assembly of God types gaining military control, and their opinions were enforced by a man with a gun. Textbook, the way extreme Islam is done. Unfortunately, in The Handmaid's Tale, it happens the same way. In my book called Witness Protection, which was a byproduct of when my other movie, 21, didn't get finished, we ended up doing a pilot. Nobody bought it, and the people in it proved that they could not act. And education and editing, oh my God. And then I took that and I got into grad school where I earned a master's degree in film editing. So when I hear people say, oh, where'd you learn that, college? You're jealous because you don't have one. I've got 3 college degrees from an undergrad program, 2 are a minor, and I've got 3 master's degrees. And I've got multiple teaching licenses, and I've got 3 Pulitzer nominations for the publishing of these books right here. These are the biographies. Now, let's talk about you. Before You Go is suggestions on how to go get work as a writer. No promises, but I'm going to leave the stage warmer than I found it. I'm going to give you so much inspiration and suggestions on what to look for. I promise you, is a higher chance of you getting a job than before you read my book. I think it's on Amazon now for $10. You don't pay to work, but for advising, you should. Do what you feel is right. There's another book that I refuse to put in PDF form. Now, Before You Go, the whole point is to get you a job as a writer, whether it points you in the right direction or it saves you from the wrong direction. That's the whole point of the book. All right. I've been through a learning curve, and it's my wisdom to you. It's 15 years of grad school in your hands in roughly 100 pages. Next, Between the Lines is literally a workbook on writing your own pre-death documents. Most people don't want to do this because it's too emotional. I don't blame you, but let's get something straight. Nobody wants to write the obituary of their own child. Or when you're dead, you can't write it anymore. Don't leave your family in the lurch, schmuck. I'm not a selfish person. Then write out your will. And what I do is I create a very simple fill in the blanks workbook for you. All you gotta do is follow the directions. Okay? You open it up, you follow the slightly red print into the black ink, write it, hand it to somebody you love, or take it to an attorney to have it formally drafted and finished. It's a workbook. Next. Last word. Now, yes, there are free services. None of them are legally binding, and all of them are contestable. So if you don't want it contested, follow my workbook and go find a professional to finish it for you. Usually a licensed attorney. Paralegals can do it, but you're going to need some other things like witnesses, and attorneys can arrange for that. Now, between the lines, we just talked about last word. This is how to make a living writing obituaries. People are going to keep dying, folks, and obituaries are an ongoing flow of work opportunity. Check out the book for yourself. Think ahead is how to perform an estate sale, what to expect from an estate sale, and decide whether or not you even need one. The biggest observation that everybody I interviewed who do estate sales are usually done by licensed realtors who are not currently in a house deal, or they're trying to get into the house deal created by the vacancy made possible by getting that, whether it's a person moved, it's usually a forced, involuntary or voluntary vacancy, or an eviction, or hey, somebody died. Whether they downsized or died, two biggest categories there. There are other reasons why people have estate sales. But what happens is you gotta have somebody else come in and coordinate it. You can't do this one yourself. Okay? I mean, you can, but it's awkward. If you can, have a yard sale. Estate sale people usually work off a commission, but the good ones always charge a retainer up front because things are expensive. Anytime you create a retail store out of a home, there is overhead. And who pays for that? The property owner. So what I do in Think Ahead is I give you a heads up on what to expect so you're not completely blindsided. And then we have support materials like websites you can go to and actually get resources near you of people who can help you in your primary language and your geography. You got to plan these things out because the people who are in charge of these services, as much as they rotate in availability, your crisis is not their urgency. Remember that. And money speeds things up, but if you don't have it, things slow to a crawl. And most people don't have the same value of your furniture that you do when you have to get rid of something. Just because you had that desk with the My Little Pony stickers on it for a long time doesn't mean anybody else is treating it like, oh my gosh, the Lost Ark of Raiders of the Lost Ark. No, it's not how it works. They usually don't care. If you have one of the Lombardi trophies, they usually don't care. Go get it appraised beforehand. You have guns, that's nice, so do other people. You have nice classic cars, that's nice, so do other people. You're not the only drop of water in the river, okay? Think Ahead gives you a reasonable expectation of how to prepare yourself. For a very traumatic event, you're gonna watch all your stuff go out the door, whether it's as a donation or somebody bought it for pennies on the dollar. It's a painful experience in most cases. It prepares you for what's to come. Now, the last thing we're gonna talk about is our meetups. Now, for student athletes, we got a whole workbook just for you to prepare your autobiographies, because let's face it, some of you are going to succeed in something other than sports. And some of you are going to succeed in sports, and after 10 years playing for a Russian team whose name I can't pronounce, you're going to want to write down your life story and say, let's market this. Or you're going to want to somehow buy your own completion bond and hire someone to make your movie the way Kurt Warner made his. Where are you? You really want that license with a movie company? It all starts with you putting pen to page and writing down what happened to you. I have a workbook that's going to walk you through the beginning part of it, and when you're ready, you bring it to us. Okay? We'll help you out. Now, we're not free, but we'll talk about how to pay for it in another one of these. The last one is a civil rights initiative book called Citizen U. It's more of a curriculum than a book, but I'll be putting it on Amazon so you have someplace to download it. It's targeting teachers of history, social studies, and civics, physics. Civics to teach your students roughly between the age of 12 and 15 how to vote, how parliamentary procedure works, how the protocol of legislature actually functions, how you take a law and initiate it, how you take a current law and change it, how you take a bad law and kill it. It teaches you all of that. Right now, it's not being taught in our classrooms. Right now, you know the priority of the average school district? Go to school, boy, come home, a girl. I got a problem with that. So instead of complaining to people who aren't going to help us at all, don't get me started. we're going to focus on the solution. Citizen U is a roughly 45-minute presentation when acted out. You meet as a club. Clubs can do anything as long as the club is sanctioned. You don't have to have it necessarily connected to an actual curriculum in the school, but they're aware of the club, you have the club, you're teaching something that you don't have time teaching in the classroom, and you learn the procedure of what Congress does. Why are we doing this? Because we want educated voters for the next election. Newsflash, in Colorado, it's different for every state. If you're 18 years old as of the presidential election to be able to vote, that means you're going to be 16 years old as of the midterms election before that. You're legally allowed to vote when you're 16 if you can vote when you're 18. So if you're legally allowed to vote during the presidential election, you'll be legally allowed to vote at midterms before that, which means we should be targeting the very same voters we're currently teaching to drive a car, and we're currently teaching how to have safe sex. So if you're all about the education of 13 to 15-year-olds, you should be the biggest fan of Citizen U. That's it for now. Let's first make some money and get you guys some work. Okay? I'm Cory Parella. Thanks for listening, and may the Lord be with you.